Well, hello, Viva Birdos. We are back from a Christmas holiday and a New Year holiday. It is 2024, and we are starting a new season of the VEB podcast. And we've got the whole crew with us today. We've got Heather and Blake and Gabe and Adam joining us as well. How was your guys' Christmas and New Year's?
It's pretty good. My mom has been working on a house that had a lot of wallpaper in it. And I spent most of my Christmas, New Year's time taking wallpaper down.
That was my least favorite job. I could go on a 30-minute rant about wallpaper, but I'll
it's
spare
one
you.
of the I've worked on a lot of house stuff. Surprisingly, you might not guess by leaving me, but I have, and it's been one of the more physically demanding tasks I've undertaken with that. It was horrible. I will never put wallpaper in my house. It's so bad. I'm traumatized.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. We just renovated our sanctuary at our church, and I don't know, it seats 400 people or whatever, and it was wallpapered on the sides. I did not touch it. We had a crew of volunteers that did it, but I just nightmares. Blake, save me. How was your Christmas, man?
Yeah.
It was good. It was busy. My wife and I decided we were going to move over the break, so it was a lot of apartment touring, and now I have a bunch of packed boxes behind me that are occupying my little office space. So I'm excited to actually be able to move and have actual space to live in again. So that'll be great.
Yeah. You moving to St. Louis?
No. We are staying in Columbus, just moving to a different apartment complex.
Yeah. Cool. Gabe, how about you, man?
It was great. My big gift, and it was kind of a gift for my dad too, is next year I'm going on like a 9-day, 8-stadium baseball tour on the West Coast.
Nice.
So I'm pretty excited about that.
Good content too.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I should bring my computer along, but
you should write about it for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to have an article from each site. Yeah.
None
of the games are Cardinals. None of the games are Cardinals, unfortunately, but it's like Sacramento, San Francisco, Sacramento AAA team, by the way, in case you forgot that. San Francisco, Los Angeles, I forgot the others. Arizona's in there somewhere. So I'm pretty pumped.
That'd be exciting. I've always wanted to do something like that.
Yeah. Adam, man. Hey, man. How's it going?
Good, man. I watched a lot of football and basketball, and it's a lot of disappointing free agency news over the past month or so, just because it's been dead silent from the Cardinals end, and the Dodgers have been firing all cylinders. But we'll see what happens going forward until next year.
Yeah, it's almost like the Dodgers are playing an entirely different sport. I'm not sure what sport that is, but it's not the same sport that the Cardinals are playing. But still, they'll face each other. Opening series, right? We go to LA and we get a firsthand look at Yamamoto and Ohtani and everyone else. Should be interesting to say the least. So, well, I don't want to beat around the bush. We got a lot to get to today. Not a ton of Cardinals news, but we still have a lot of content because, again, we asked you guys questions on the site, what you wanted to hear from, and we got a good response. We've got like 30 or 40 questions to try to get through, which we will try to get through them all. First, though, sort of the biggest thing that's happened lately is that ZiPS came out. ZiPS is Dan Szymborski's projection system over at Fangraphs, and you can check it out on the site. The biggest article I've written in 9 months is up there on ZiPS. Most of it is explaining what ZiPS is, to be honest. Not a ton of actual content in there, but it's worth the read. And it's our first kind of detailed look at what this team actually is. I think especially coming from a 71 win team, it's hard to get, I feel like, and you guys can weigh on this too, hard to get sort of a feeling on how good this team is based on how good they were and then how bad they were. And then are they back? Are they not back? Where actually they are. And ZiPS is kind of that first sort of mile marker. Pacoda comes out, much later. That first mile marker that sort of says, this is what this team is. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but Dan Szymborski has the Cardinals at about 85 to 90 wins and a fairly good looking offense, sort of average or better across the board. Pitching staff we can talk about, good bullpen, some of the rotation stuff, it's very deep. I'll put it that way, surprisingly deep. And so a lot of things to go through. So let's just kind of start what I feel like is the most optimistic part of the projections, which is the offense. And so I'll just throw it out to Gabe. We'll start with Gabe. Gabe, anything stand out to you on the offensive side of the ball from the projections from Zips?
Well, I sort of agree, but I would say the most optimistic is the AAA pitchers projections. But
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah,
because the offense seems reasonable and pitching seems like okay, I believe it when I see it. The thing that stood out to me about the offense, honestly, was the top near age offensive comps. I maybe should have been later in the question for this because it's a little deeper, but Nolan Arenado. Well, we got Aramis Ramirez for Arenado, Jimmy Rollins for Tommy Edman, which I never realized Jimmy Rollins wasn't as good offensively as I thought he was because it fits more than I thought, and I thought Rollins was like a guy. And then Carlton Fisk for Wilson Contreras. That's like one of the best aging catchers history. He played till he was like 42 and was pretty good at like 40. And Nolan Gorman's was the most exciting because it's three guys you're like 30 plus WAR or higher for their career. Evan Longoria, Alex Gordon, Ron Say. And Say and Longoria both have 55 career WAR.
Yeah.
It's offense only, but like that's like mind numbing. And that might be. And then Todd Hundley for Jimmy Crick was pretty fun, honestly, even though that's based off almost nothing.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that one. Yeah.
But yeah, and then I wanted to also make the point about the pitching, but there are literally no exciting pitching comps. Like not even, I think Ryan Helsley got Troy Percival. Cool. That's about it. Everybody else was some
that one makes a lot of sense to me. Troy Percival and Ryan Helsley, that fits somewhere, and there's somewhere in my mental connections from the 90s. It seems to really connect. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. You didn't mention this one, but Jordan Walker, his third hit. Well, Chet Lemon, first of all, is not a bad. We don't need to go down the ancient path of that, but not a bad comp. But then Frank Robinson is the number 3 comp for Jordan Walker. Again, it makes sense. Robinson was a power hitter, not a huge contact guy. Built his career out of a lot of power over a long period of time. So Robinson's an interesting guy there. Also, a tall hitter too. So interesting comp for Walker.
I forgot about Goldschmidt, by the way, because Jason Worth is
Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig.
Yeah,
Edgar Martinez.
So,
he ages like
Edgar Martinez. Yeah.
With these player comps, top near age. So it's that you would look at that season specifically that matches the age.
Yeah, the age. So Lou Gehrig's age, what, 36 season? How old?
It was the day before or the year before he retired.
So. Yeah, year before he retired. Yeah.
Probably wasn't going to collapse. So it's a good even though, after that it didn't turn out well. But
yeah, already still battling, the disease, so yeah. Hopefully Goldschmidt won't have, anything like that. But still it's a Lou Gehrig, just such a
Arenado got Brooks Robinson, which offensively that's not as exciting, but
fits. I mean, it fits. That's a defensive one. Mike Lowell, even in between there, was a good hitter for quite a while. So a lot of just cool names and those things. It's hard to put a lot of stock into them, but it's still a lot of fun. Matt Kopernik, by the way, what his comp is looking at him, Billy Bean. So maybe he'll turn into the next great general manager. You never know.
I'm dying to know how they created this model in order to get these player comps, like what these inputs variables were, just to understand how they would get someone like Aramis Ramirez or Brooks Robinson for Nolan Arenado. I get defensive, but just how they came up with some of these names like Lou Gehrig for Paul Goldschmidt, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, we can have Dan on the show. I'm this came out so fast to me that I didn't even try to reach out to him. But if we wanted to, and we're not going to have any content for a couple of weeks, we could reach out and see if he wanted to come on this year, or maybe book him for next year, because he's done some Cardinals podcasts. He does some podcasting. We know he checks out the site. He's a distant friend of the site, but it wouldn't be hard to have him come on, and I think it would be a great interview for our fans. So I'm going to jump down. Just on my screen, it's a little weird. I know it'll record a little differently, but Adam, what stood out to you on the offensive side of the Zips?
I mean, for me, it's just probably seeing that we've got a 2.1 WAR on right field. That's probably just being carried by Lars Nootbaar, his defense, right? I mean, you still have like Jordan Walker, but I'll be surprised if it's majority Walker plate appearances in right field. If they're a 2.1, if he's a 2.1 WAR out there, I'd be kind of shocked. Just simply because I feel like you're still going to have a little bit of a learning curve in terms of his defense out there. I think it'll be somewhat of a miracle if he is an average defender at right field at some point. I think you're going to have a career below average guy. So seeing him at a 2.1 WAR, even with how good of a hitter he is, seeing that 2.1 WAR right now, at this stage of his career, was kind of shocking to me. So I know it's position wise, but I know it's probably him taking a majority of the plate appearances.
Yeah.
I have good news for you though. Walker has a 2 WAR projection with -8 defense.
Yeah.
So that's legit. That's actually basically
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I didn't see the Wilbur.
And I don't know how much there's a budget. I'm not sure there's really a positional adjustment in the defensive rating there. I really can't remember how he does it, but as a point of comparison, on the left side, Nootbaar is an average fielder, maybe a little bit above average in left. So he's a -4, which does make me think there might be a positional adjustment. But
there's
then,
not.
like,
It just isn't very good at the defense, honestly.
do what?
Said there's not a positional adjustment. You got to look at where they're listed as a fielder. Nootbaar is listed as a center fielder, so that's part of why. Too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't think there was a position. So yeah, -8 is just real. That's just a real, penalty for his defense, and not an optimistic one for him. But yeah, 2.0 FWAR with that penalty is pretty strong. A 122 OPS plus, which for our purposes would be the same as WRC plus. So
Yeah, I think that's really the part that stood out to me when I looked at it is Jordan Walker is literally still 21 years old, and he's projected to be ever so slightly worse than Paul Goldschmidt as a hitter right now. And if you look at his 80th percentile outcome, it's some like ridiculous like 145 OPS plus, which is the highest on the team. Like the guy clearly has superstar potential on the offensive side. Like if he could even be an average defender, he's going to be an incredibly valuable player.
yeah, which is asking a lot. But I mean, as I've written and we've talked about it before, it's not like when they put Ryan Braun in the outfield and they tried him. Braun didn't have that athleticism. Walker's got the speed. Theoretically, he has soft hands from being an infielder and a third baseman. He just literally has no time there at all. So he is the kind of guy that could progress fairly quickly. Now his peak probably isn't going to be very high, but he could go from horrendous to close to average faster than a typical hitter. Maybe I'm overestimating how hard it is to play right field. I probably am, but it doesn't seem like it's that hard. I play the outfield, so Walker can't too.
Right, he certainly has to be better than me at it.
Yeah. Blake, anything for you that stands out offensively?
Yeah, and I mean, I think since we just talked about Jordan Walker, like I feel like Mason Wynn is the perfect contrast to him.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the WAR, it's almost like all of his WAR is being generated by his defensive value. I think his average or his 50th percentile OPS plus was 88. His 80th percentile was 107, I think. So when you look at like he's very likely to be a below average hitter. And I think this is where a lot of the variance comes in with him because when we looked at him play defense, like you can see the raw abilities there. But when the defensive metrics didn't grade him out super highly in this limited sample size, so like there is a world in which Mason Wynn just is not a very good major league player, at least to start the year. But there's also a world in which that defense comes around and like he can just have like Tommy Edman, Paul DeYoung seasons where he can be that like slightly below league average hitter and still be a 3-4 WAR player. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the glove pans out with him.
That kind of leads into something that I noticed was that they have Wynn projected with 626 plate appearances, which seems like, I guess he is going to be the starting shortstop. But that seems like, I know they use like past experience as a way to sort of generate these numbers. And since he didn't start as much last season, it seems like a big leap to all of a sudden have the most plate appearances on the team.
Yeah, that is because that's the highest PA projection is 626 with Wynn and 625 with Walker. I think some of that is sort of like it assumes if they were healthy for 162 games, how many PAs they were. And what they're kind of saying there is that Walker and Wynn really don't have any injury history at all in their past, and so there's a high chance of them getting up to what would about be the max. But like, Arenado's is a little lower, Goldsmith's is a little lower, probably because of age. But Nolan Gorman is at 504 because of what we saw last year. So
Mhm.
yeah,
It's
Goldsmith is at 613, I think. He's like the next highest after
yeah,
that.
Goldschmidt's a little high. I started that sentence
Yeah.
and then had to correct myself.
Yeah. I was saying, I was like, his is actually pretty high because that was the other thing I noticed. I'm like, dang,
Yeah,
go Goldschmidt, like,
right.
you go, man.
I think for the AAA guys that he just like you said, it assumes there's no they just start as much as they can because Victor Scott's got 588 plate appearances, Thomas Ajacci has 608. It's not like pretending how teams will utilize those plate appearances.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As
That's
opposed
something
to,
to consider when you look at like these WAR totals. Is that's assuming, which if they do reach these, they probably will have, a full. If they're playing this well, they probably will get a full season of plate appearances. But they might not.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually wish Dan had like a WAR per 600 plate appearances column on there to like make it a rate factor so it'd be easier for us to see because the WAR
Yeah.
doesn't mean that much if the plate appearances aren't going to be matching what he has
Right.
there.
Mhm.
Because I can't
Yeah.
stand doing that math myself, man.
Yeah,
That's
neither can I. Too much.
Don't make me do it.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I kind of agree because especially with the pitchers too, it can get, some of this we showed up on in our conversations on the site. We might as well jump down to the pitching. It like I wouldn't say your optimism, but maybe your feelings about the pitching staff really depends on how many innings you're willing to give to them. Because if you give Mikolas and Lynn and Gibson 175 to 200 innings, their war totals aren't bad, but they're not projected to do that. And so, so they end up in some cases not well below low two, but not 1.9s across the board. So yeah, let's jump to the pitching. By the way, I didn't really have anything else to add. I think you guys covered the offensive well. And one of the things I already wrote 300,000 words on this, so you all know that I was a little surprised that there weren't any stars. I guess I mean I wasn't really surprised. I kind of anticipated, hadn't thought about it, but I thought Goldschmidt's projection was a little disappointing. And I think that the projections are baking in a little bit too much of a historical decline based on age. When you looked at his analytics, there's no reason to think that there's any decline coming next year. And so a sub three, did they have him at a 3.0 F4, 3.1, whatever it was? I mean, like, it's really hard for me to imagine him not being, over, 2.9, for him not being over, 3.5 to 4.5 WAR, even if he produced that line. And I actually have a lot of trouble thinking that he's going to produce that line either. Like, it should be, there's a lot of reason to think it'll be a little bit better than that. So Arenado's on the other hand, I'm not so sure about it. 3.4 F4 projection, 116 WRC plus, OPS plus is what it is. I could kind of believe that. So yeah, we'll just have to see if the stars stay stars or some of these young players rise up, and they could. I'm still a big believer in Lars Nootbaar, so we'll just see what happens. Okay, that's enough on offense. Let's go to pitching. And let's just keep going with what we're doing. Gabe, pitching staff, you seem to be, maybe optimism isn't the right word, or maybe we might not even be using that word. Encouraged maybe would be a word about the pitching. So tell me what you like about what you saw.
Well, it's so tricky because the international league where the Memphis Redbirds play, their run environment is insane. And I wonder if that's like slightly messing with the projections a little in a negative or positive way. I don't know.
It seems like it is, in my opinion. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say because it's I think the league average ERA was 5.21 or something like that. It's in the 5+ range. I know that. And the adjustment that they made essentially is repeating what they do in AAA in the majors because that's how big of a difference it is. And I don't know if I totally buy that. I like the massive arms that are 1 to 1.5 in like 100 to 120 innings. You figure some of these guys might pitch to it, whether it's Robersay, McGreevy, Rosefo, Libertor, Thompson. I mean, that's the encouraging part is that most of them have fairly good projections, and they're not going to be wrong about all of them. I would think so. Just like the amount of pretty good projections that could pitch right now is super encouraging. And that's my big takeaway from the pitching. The rest is pretty much what I would expect. Although one funny thing I noticed was Sonny Gray's 80th percentile is 0.2 WAR higher than his 50th percentile. I don't know if you see that very often.
No.
It's 3.8 WAR, whereas his 50th is 3.6 WAR.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So, Blake, what do you think about that? I mean, because I don't know if you read it and you saw it. I mean, basically every AAA and AA pitcher on the Cardinals is projected to be just as good as Kyle Gibson, which I'm sorry, that's not going to be the case. You know, I'm a fan. I'm fine with Gibson. He's a perfectly fine starter, but 2 WAR, 180 inning Kyle Gibson is not the same as Connor Lum. I mean, they're not the same guy. There's no way that Victor Santos can come in here and make us forget that Kyle Gibson exists, right? I mean, or am I wrong about that?
No, you're not wrong. And I mean, when we look at it, like it literally has Connor Thomas projected for a lower FIP than Kyle Gibson.
Right.
It has Drew Rom projected for like kind of a significantly lower FIP than Kyle Gibson, and I am absolutely not a Drew Rom in the rotation believer.
Drew Rom would be one of the best pitchers on the team. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
I don't really put a whole lot of stock into a lot of those AAA projections. I do think the Cardinals actually have a lot more like quality upper level pitching prospects than they did last year. And I think that helps. So while I do think the projections are high, I do think that they at least do have more pitching depth than they had last year if injuries do hit them hard. But yeah, I'm really not putting a whole lot of weight into expecting like Michael McGreevy to be a league average pitcher right now, or Drew Rom to be a better than league average pitcher right now.
But could Michael McGreevy come in and give you a 4 point? I mean, that is kind of league average. What are we going to say a league average FIP is? 4.3, 4.4?
It's probably in that like 4.4 to 4.5 range.
You think
if I were
so?
to get like
Yeah.
probably Kyle Gibson at 4.51 is the projection. That's probably right about league average.
Okay, so McGreevy at 4.61 is a little
Slightly
bit above,
worse.
a little bit worse than league average. You don't think with a 4.5, 4.3, ERA last and FIP last year at AAA in that run environment that McGreevy isn't a 4.5 pitcher next year in the majors?
I think it's possible. I would hesitate to project that as his mid-range outcome because
Yeah. Okay, that's
have
a good point.
He does have serious issues against lefties. The quality of the stuff's just I question how many bats he's going to miss at the major league level. And he's just when you're at that point, you're really just kind of walking the tightrope. If his command even takes like a half a step back with him nibbling around the edge too much, it's going to hurt. So it's definitely like within his range of outcomes. I'm just not willing to project it as a 50th percentile outcome.
Yeah. Adam,
general,
what do you got from pitching?
Yeah, I was just going to say in general, I tend not to put a ton of stock into these projections. I know it's kind of just like fun to kind of look at over the off season, just kind of seeing. But I know like Cardinals Freak Jacob did like an R score, like it did like a correlation of the like between like actual like results and the ZiPS projection. It's like a 0.3 R squared value, which like shows that like the strength of the model is awful. So it just kind of is there just to kind of like say, hey, like, this player could be worth this much. And it's just in general, just not really worth like a lot, just long run. But in terms of, so I'm not really surprised in like to see like, we're like to see like a guy like Michael McGreevy be at the average, and it's just like makes no sense at all. But in terms of your pitchers, just, like that was one of like, when you see Michael McGreevy as high as he was, even if it's just a league average, I don't think he'll probably be that, at least as a rookie. Maybe at some point throughout his first 6 years of team control. But honestly, seeing the rotation as it is right now, I guess that's probably like fine, except for maybe Sonny Gray at 3.6. I'm probably not expecting him to be as good, but I could be wrong. But you also have the bullpen as well at 4.2. It still shows that you need to add and address the bullpen as well. So really, just for me, I'm not expecting 85 to 90 wins at all. I'm probably expecting more like 80 to 85 if they're lucky, unless they add, unless they make some sort of substantial addition to the team, because right now it's still not looking pretty, at least in my end.
Mm-hmm. Heather, you got anything to add on the pitching side of things?
I have 2 things that I see. First of all, let me start with this. looks like this team is going to give up a lot of home runs because I don't see a single home run per 9 under 1.
And I wonder if that's not normalized to 1. I wouldn't
You
surprise me if
think?
it was.
Because
Because
that
Gray limits home runs about as well as anyone, and he's at
yeah.
9, and I don't see anyone below that. And there's some guys that can limit home runs in the minors too. So
Okay, that would make me feel better if that were the case.
yeah,
Because I'm like,
yeah.
I'm looking at that and I'm like, that doesn't right. Michaelis doesn't give up a lot of homers, does he? Maybe he did last season. I can't remember, but I thought
He
with
was
all his
well
struggles
above
last
average. That
season,
was part of the problem
yeah,
with some of his stats, and is that his home run rate was quite a bit better than expected. So yeah.
yeah. Because I thought like with all his troubles, he didn't give up a lot of homers. So that was one thing I noticed. The other thing is, do you all think Tink Hence will get over 100 major league innings
No,
this season? I
Not
don't think
this
so
year.
either.
no.
Right? And is that projecting him for 104
No, no, that's just they do that for the minor leaguers. It doesn't all the
for minor league innings? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, you think he'll get over 100 major league innings? Because I don't think so. He
Yeah.
just went up to AAA. Like, I'm like, how do you tell me how to read?
It doesn't predict how the team will use the players. It just
Mhm.
It's just doing overall innings.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much all like the minor leaguers are right at 100 or lower, and the ones that were injured are lower. So like Tink Hence is at 105. Takeo Roby missed quite a bit this season. He's at 87. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I totally knew that. That was for everyone else. So that everyone else knows too.
Good
I was
job.
just pretending.
Good job, Heather.
But yeah, so those two things, that was the one thing I stood out to me was the home runs per 9. But if that is not like a pure like number projection, then that's not nearly as concerning as it was. I'm like, well, that's not good. That's not good at all.
Well, for me, one of the things that I was just sort of thinking about is, and I'd have to go back and look at the actual numbers, but it's really hard for me to get excited about pitching projections where I realize that Gray's is 3.6 FWAR on the actual image, but that's with the depth charts innings, not with the actual innings he's projected with ZiPS. So at ZiPS has him 154 with a 3.0 FWAR. Well, that's not. I mean, that's still at that innings total. It's still one of the better pitchers like in the National League. So I don't have a problem with that. But then no other pitchers over 2 concerns me quite a bit, because the closest to 2 is Mikolas, and Mikolas is really only there because of innings. It's certainly not the peripheral stats that Fangraphs is showing for him. And then, kind of the best, maybe the guy with the best peripherals on the whole team practically is Steven Matz. But, they're only saying, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to end up doing it.
I know. I know.
That, Matz, they've only got him for 103 innings and 1.5, WAR. So he's not as good as Gray. But last year, again, I'm doing this off the top of my head. I saw him yesterday. Montgomery had a really good projection. Mikolas had a over 2.5, something projection last year. Flaherty had over 2 as a projection. I mean, we had some pitchers that projected to be better than this staff. And obviously things went wrong for some of them, but honestly, some of them just sort of fell back to the levels that these guys are projected to now. Flaherty and Gibson, the difference between them is not huge last year. And I think about how bad we think that Gibson or that Flaherty was. See, I just mentally did it. Now the difference is innings. Flaherty struggled to get through his innings, and Gibson provided the innings, but also some of that's injury recovery and how they were used. So I think the depth is encouraging. I think the quality is challenging, and you're really just going to have to hope that Sonny Gray stays healthy. Otherwise, there's going to be some issues. So let's go down to the next one. I think it's a good time for doing. Now, Adam's already queued us off for his. So I don't know, Adam, if you got anything else. We're talking about projected win total. Dan Zimborski and his cats say 85 to 90 wins. Adam says 80 to 85. Anything you want to add to that? Or are we good? We good there, Adam?
let somebody else explain their
Okay.
situation.
So let's go reverse, because I like to mix things up and keep these guys on their toes. Heather, where you got them at right now based on zips? Just zips. I
Me
realize that,
first?
we're not making our final predictions yet. So how are you feeling right now?
So what does it say? 85 to 90 was the projection. 90 feels high. 85, like this is splitting hairs probably, but I don't know why, but 90 feels high. Maybe like 88, some between those two, but like which this is what 85 to 90 means. So I just picked one, 85 to 90.
87 and a half, right?
Yeah, right. Because 90 feels like it's too high, like maybe 88 at the highest. So maybe I would move that range down from like 83 to 88,
Okay.
like at the most. Just because like we kind of talked about this. I'm a little concerned about Nolan Arenado's aging. I'm not concerned, but Tommy Edman seems to have gotten a pretty good projection. So has a lot of Mason Wynn's value seems to be in defense, and we don't know if he's even going to get like all those plate appearances. Jordan Walker might take another year or so to really come into his own. There's a lot of question marks on that offense for me, even though it seems pretty strong. And then I think also I'm traumatized from last season. And then the pitching does not inspire a lot of confidence. Like I said, I feel like they like you mentioned, there's depth. It's just like a lot of like medium, and that could be fine.
So we're gonna drop you at 87 and a half or lower, is what I kind of hear you saying. Okay.
That's what
Blake,
I think.
Blake, what you got?
I agree with Heather. I'd probably lower like the 85 to 90 instead of 85 being the low end. That feels kind of like the middle ground to me. So I'm probably in that like 83 to 87 range, at least based on zips. And obviously, like if there's the Cardinals decide to bring a couple relievers, that's going to go up, etc. So I think just based on the zips, it's like 83 to 87.
Gabe?
I mean, I'm probably in the same range as you guys. What I like to do when I look at these things is like, where's somebody overperforming and what their likelihood is of overperforming, and then raising our win total. And we got a couple of good candidates for that. I think Jordan Walker being a big one if he explodes with the bat. Nolan Gorman being probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
If
I was
he
a little disappointed in Gorman's projections. Honestly, I think that there's more there than what they're giving him. But yeah,
well, yeah, that's what my point is. If you think they're low on a guy, then like it's funny that you said Goldschmidt, because he's an example of where I don't know if there's a whole lot of upside beyond his projection. Because like maybe he's a 4-WAR player, but that's less than a win or less. And whereas like Arenado, I'm slightly higher on him than you guys seem to be, where I think he has a decent shot of having another 5-WAR season, because I think his defense is, I don't know, +6 or something. I don't know. I'm just, I believe in the sort of narrative where he kind of just, the second half just took it out of him or whatever. And
like he was hurt and then they were losing, and so then he just stopped trying. I hope that's the case.
Well, I don't think he stopped trying. I don't know.
I don't want to say stop trying, but you know what I mean.
Whatever. I think there's upside in Arenado. I don't think there's a whole lot of upside with Mason Wynn's projection, just because I would be surprised if he's immediately an elite defender. So that part's kind of a bummer. But it feels like there's more players where I look at it and I'm like, I could see them going higher than there are players where I could see them going lower. So, I mean, my main hope is just most of the young guys just take a huge step forward, and we'll end up looking like a better team than maybe we do on paper right now. But yeah, 85 to 90, I pretty much agree with that.
Yeah. I think for me, I think I'm probably closer to Adam here. Here's where I'm basing this off of is that one, we don't know what else they're going to do, but I would presume that whatever else they do isn't going to add much to the WAR win totals. Like it would improve the team, but the difference, and I talked about this a little bit, the difference between Jordan Hicks or Phil Matten and Nick Robertson, is that, or whoever, right, is just not huge. Like I mean, it's there, but it's not even a win. It's not even a war, so it would help the team. It'll help us feel better about it. It'll certainly help us win some games that we might have lost, but in the aggregate, everything kind of evens out for these relievers. But for me, it's who's going to go down. Like what tragedy is going to happen in spring training? What pitcher is going to go down in spring training? And if it's Lance Lynn, maybe it doesn't matter that much because maybe Zips isn't a huge fan of Zach Thompson. I think Thompson will be fine. I think Liberatore would be pretty much fine based on the numbers we're talking about, 4.5 to 4.7 FIP. I think Liberatore could probably do that. It hurt the bullpen, but they'd have time to make that up. If Gibson or Gray in particular end up missing 10 to 15 starts, oh boy, man, I mean, it could get ugly fast. And I just don't know that the offense has the juice left with an older Goldschmidt and a shaky Arenado. I agree with you on the upside, Gabe, but what's he going to do? I don't know that the juice is there to pull them out of it. Like they didn't do it last year. So not that they would be down to 71 wins again, but I could easily see, in 78 to 84 range, if we're going to stick to a 5 or 6 range, I'd probably lean on the higher end of that today. But then if when that thing happens, we're back down to a 500 club for me. For now, we'll see. I might change my mind depending on how I decide Steven Matz is going to do. But that's.
Did you mean to say Gibson?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I like Gibson. Like I don't think Gibson is a 1.5 WAR player. I think Gibson is a 2.5 WAR player.
Well, I mean, it has him as effectively a two or if he pitches a full season. But I don't know. I don't think him going down would impact the season too much. But
well, I mean, more than who? More than an injured Matt. I mean, Matt's we're not counting on him that much. Lynn, I guess Gibson's the guy that I'm like, he should be over 2. He's the only one that I think other than Gray that should definitely be over 2. If they lose that, then you're counting on, someone else is going to get hurt too. So I'm already kind of counting Thompson. At that point, you're down to Liberatore, you're down to Raw. I mean, we don't even know exactly who the next guy in line would be. And I do think the gap between what I view Gibson as and what Rom actually is, I think is larger than what the Zips projection says. And I think it could just have a trickle down effect throughout the whole bullpen and system and everything. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm probably in the 78, 83 range with probably an 82 win being my midpoint. So we'll see where we go from there. Okay. Cardinals still have money left. They're still 6 million below where they were last year in their budget. Still got 20 million below what I projected as their budget, 30 million below what they've said their budget is for the whole year, which is over 200. So, why haven't we seen any reliever signings, guys? Are we still expecting this? Are the Cardinals just, we haven't seen any around the baseball either, other than, Woo Sun Goob signed, the other day and Matsui before Christmas, I think. So what's going on? What's the holdup here? Anyone can jump in, just whoever wants to talk about it.
I think you hit it earlier. Like, there's just not been a whole lot of movement, and if the market's not moving, the Cardinals probably just don't feel the need to jump in it. And especially if they're trying to add, certainty in the bullpen isn't exactly something you can count on, but if they're trying to look for guys that are maybe a little more sure, going for somebody like Woo-Suk-Go or Yuki Matsui, like they both have some red flags in the profile, and they could hit big. They could also miss kind of big. And it's not even necessarily about the money there as much as it is the Cardinals just actually wanting and needing production in the bullpen. So I'm fine with them sitting those out if that's not who they wanted. So besides that, there really hasn't been a whole lot of movement. Like if the Cardinals are in heavily on Jordan Hicks, like I can imagine they're not the only team that's in on Jordan Hicks. So that might just be a slower moving market, and they want to see how that develops before they do anything else. So they got a lot of their business done early. It's fine to me if they want to wait till closer to spring training, as long as they actually go out and get the bullpen arms that they need.
Is there a reason? I'll just go randomly, Gabe. Is there a reason why Matsui and one of them was I think he had a qualifying, not a qualifying offer. What am I trying to say? Posting fee.
Posting fee.
Yeah, so he had a timer on his stuff. But why would those guys sign before someone like Hicks and Matten and some of these other basically high end, not quite closer level, but high quality relievers? Like what? Why are those guys still on the market at this point?
Well, I mean, yeah, like you said, part of it is they have a window, but also part of it is they probably wanted to play on the West Coast, and the Padres were interested, and it was just an easy sort of negotiation, probably on some level. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know like how much interest there was from around the league, I guess, in theory, because if they're like interested in the West Coast, maybe some teams aren't even calling them like, we know you're going to go to the Padres, Dodgers, or Giants or whatever. So we're probably not going to pay you more than like 20 million. So there's no point in getting this in this. I don't know. That's my best explanation. There being a sort of self-imposed, not self-imposed, a deadline to when you can sign them is probably the biggest reason. Just they need to get it done at a certain point, which is not true of any other reliever. That's the best I got.
Yeah. I guess I would just expect something soon. I mean, I don't know how the market's going to change at this point. You got a pretty good idea of what Hicks is demanding, who's interested in him. Same with Matt, and same with these others. And I realize there's choices, and I guess there's a lot of, I guess they're probably still waiting on the starters to get their jobs done too. Snell's still out there, and Montgomery. So just been a kind of a surprisingly slow market considering, you know, everything that's been out there and the wild need for pitching. So
Mhm.
I guess we'll just continue to wait. But I kind of think you guys do as well. Do expect them to bring in a reliever or two and spend a little bit of that money. And I don't know that that would really finish off this team, but it would be a step in the right direction, I suppose. So, Adam, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just in general, in terms of, the bullpen, I'm kind of shocked that they haven't addressed, kind of more of that pitching staff in general. We thought there would be more in the starters, and then, we also thought they would be addressing some of the guys that we saw the Padres go after with Yuki Matsui and Luseko. I just think in general, I think they're going to be missing just quite a bit still. We talked about this as projection. The reason why I said 80 to 85 and why you were kind of with me on that, JP, is that the rotation and the bullpen are like decent, but I think the lineup is for as decent as that is as well. I think you're missing an extra bat. I was looking the Cardinals are like a 104 WRC plus compared to other teams that are higher in the National League. So overall, there's just a lot to be missing here, and especially when we talk about the bullpen as well.
Yeah. Well, let's jump to some of our questions here, and I got some that I don't know that all of us necessarily will take, but we'll do sort of broader range questions, and then we'll jump to some faster sort of area of expertise questions, like some prospect questions that Blake will hit, and some payroll questions I'll hit, and some writing questions that Heather will hit. So we're gonna spread those around, but let's just start at the beginning. This is a hypothetical. I thought this was a really good question from THP0344. He asked, the Cardinals win 85 games in 2024. Now what? Fire people, change strategy, or continue on? And I guess we could answer this two ways, although we don't need to spend a lot of time here. What you would do and what you think the club would do. 85 wins. Let's assume that misses the playoffs or right at the very back end of it. That probably wouldn't take the division. I'd be shocked if 85 wins takes the division. So let's say they sneak into a last wild card spot. 85 wins. What would you do at the end of the season? What will the Cardinals do? Gabe, go ahead.
Well, I saw that question. I was like, God, I really need more context for this to answer this. But based off what the Cubs, Reds, Pirates, Brewers have done and are maybe likely to do, I think 85 wins might win the division, to be perfectly honest. And
it'd be very unusual, but the talent's not there. So
I mean, the Cubs lost Bellinger and Stroman, and an owner announced at the beginning of the offseason, we're going to keep our payroll at 187 million or whatever the hell it was. And there's not a whole lot of room for them to operate, and whatever they get will just match what they did last year, if not make it worse. So I'm not that high in the division as large. So I guess based off the fact that I'm not that high in the division, if 85 wins would change nothing really. But like I said, I really need more context to answer that question properly, because how does Nolan Gorman develop? How does Jordan Walker develop? How does Mason win? Because if those guys look like, oh, we're going to the stratosphere next year, well, then you obviously don't need to change anything. But if, I don't know, 4 or 5 pitchers break down, okay, well, now we need to change our pitching again. So, I mean, I don't, yeah.
That's a good comment, because that one total could prove that what they're doing is working, could also demonstrate that what they actually did failed.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah. Blake, you got any? I mean, really, assuming the context we have, or whatever context you want to assume, what do you think?
I mean, just assuming we're just going to take at face value 85 games and who the Cardinals are, they're probably not going to change anything. And if they do change, I mean, in terms of personnel, like if they change something, it's probably going to be Ollie Marmol who gets fired and not John Mozeliak. I think Mozeliak's basically going to get his last year, get moved into whatever upper role that DeWitt wants to move him into, and he's not going to get fired before that happens. So really, the only change would be from the manager. In terms of strategy, like again, I think if we're going to see Mo and DeWitt still in the same positions, then the strategy might get tweaked. But you're not going to see the Cardinals make a U-turn on something. That's just not their style. So I wouldn't expect a ton of changes, especially if 85 wins gets them into the playoffs. I think if it doesn't, then that's when Marmol might be on the hot seat a little bit. But not a whole lot of changes.
Yeah. Let's move to the next one. This is from JDog55. Always a fan of JDog. Hey, man. I like this question. We'll go Heather and Adam on this one. You're starting a super team using NL players currently on a major league roster. Would any Cardinals make it? Heather, go ahead. Super team, NL players only. Any Cardinals on it?
I feel like you would have to put Paul Goldschmidt on your team. Either Goldschmidt or I won't take Arenado. I'll just go Goldschmidt. But like those were the two finalists for the MVP, not last season, the season before. And Paul Goldschmidt is a season away from an MVP. I feel like I'm trying to think of NL first baseman that I would prefer to him, especially with the
Freeman.
Yeah, that would be probably one of them. But Goldschmidt's one of the better. Is Freeman pretty good at defense too? I guess he is, but Goldschmidt's one of the better defenders at first base also. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not building. I'm just building a one season team, right? So it's not like a future I have to worry about. So that I probably would be hard pressed to not put Goldschmidt on my team. Even if a DH or something.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah. If we're building like an all like top 25 team, I guess you could probably put Goldschmidt and Arenado in somewhere, maybe in a reserve. Maybe Arenado makes a starting team, but I would probably have Freddie Freeman at my first base spot. Maybe over Paul Goldschmidt. But I think Goldschmidt probably makes the team as like a DH or like a second team guy.
Yeah. I think the obvious one that wouldn't get thought of if you're going 25 men deep, that means you need 8 relievers, and there are not 8 relievers in the NL better than Ryan Helsley. So Helsley's the other addition that I'd throw in there. That's probably it. I probably would also have. I hadn't really thought about the bench actually, so yeah, I'd probably have Goldschmidt and Arenado as well. So those are my 3. I love the name Cool Noodles. Which current young Cardinal? Let's go Blake on this one to start, and then I'll pass it around a little bit. Which current young Cardinal has the best chance of being a superstar for the team for many years? Current young Cardinal has the best chance of being a superstar. We've had this question before. It's an easy answer.
Yeah, it's Jordan Walker. I mean, when you see a guy who can hit the ball as well as he can at 21, like he doesn't have to do that much, honestly, defensively to be an incredibly valuable player. So it's Jordan Walker.
Yeah. Anyone down in the minors that we wanted to point out? I mean, I realize it says current young Cardinal, and really only have one choice, maybe 2. I mean, I guess
Nootbaar.
How young are we? Yeah, I'd go Nootbaar.
Qualifies? Does he qualify as still being young? I suppose so. So
yeah, he's younger than me. That's young. Right. Someone tell me I'm right.
Yeah, right.
Question: best chance? What was it again?
Best chance of being a superstar. It's Walker. Yeah.
I go pitching side. You could go and slightly higher on Tacoma Roby than Tim Kent's, but you could go either one of them, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of thinking of this too, like besides playing ability, although I think Jordan Walker also has the personality and charisma to be a superstar, but like Lars Nootbaar has this international fame now.
Yeah.
From the
technically Nootbaar's already been a superstar.
He's already a superstar.
Just not necessarily in America. Yeah.
So Nootbaar, maybe that could. I'm just trying to think of a non-Jordan Walker answer because that's just because we have to be somewhat entertaining, right?
Yeah.
I
I
guess
will
you could.
personally say, oh, go ahead, Gabe.
No, I'm figuring. Do you have a different answer than Walker or no?
Yeah, I was just gonna go with Newbar. I feel like the narrative that it's a Walker runaway is a little overstated, just simply because that we know that Walker will never be a superstar defender. At least we think he won't. Go or Newbar, or yeah, Walker is. Newbar will potentially be at least above average, if not better. And who's to say that Lars Newbar can't be a 135, 140 WRC plus player at peak? I think he absolutely can,
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
wouldn't be surprised if it happens as early as next year.
Yeah.
So I think that he's like his like maybe 60th or 70 percentile outcome is maybe like a 4 or 5 WAR player, and it's not entirely different for Jordan Walker. But I just if you want to answer Walker, go ahead. But I feel like Newbar isn't too far down the list if he's not on par, if not maybe even above Jordan Walker.
Good point.
I'll add to that, sort of, not for Newbar, but that there's a decent argument you could answer either Nathan Nolan Gorman, because Gorman has already made huge strides from one year to next, and one of the biggest indicators of being able to become a superstar is adjusting successfully.
Yeah.
Walker has done that, hitting wise at least.
Yeah.
But Gorman made huge strides both defensively and offensively. And in Wynn's case, if he's really an elite defender, I mean, have you seen Francisco Lindor's seasons? His bat has never been crazy, and he posted like 5, 6, 7 more seasons. Like his ceiling maybe is like a 130 from Lindor, but like he's got a couple 5 more years with like a 105 work. And if Wynn is that kind of defender, I mean, he could be a perennial all-star MVP candidate, basically.
Yeah. Good. What do you guys want to do now? Like, we've got 3 different categories. We're not going to get all the questions. Not even going to try to get all the questions. I think the most questions, honestly, was in this prospect area. So let's do that. So we'll hit some of these prospect questions. And man, I really feel like London Bird's question is worth acknowledging, but he even said it needs to be like a full-on podcast, and I agree with that. So London Bird, I'm going to acknowledge your question. Top 10 pitching prospects in the organization. Unless, Blake, you can just give me 10 names real fast.
I can literally go down the list.
Do it. Yeah, give me 10 names. Give London Bird 10 names.
Completely context free. Takao Roby, Tink Hens, Cooper Jerpy, Gordon Graceffa, Michael McGreevy, Max Radrick, Samra Bursa, Ian Bedell, Adam Klopfenstein, Bryson Motts.
Got one more, man.
I like that last one.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Is that 9 or is that 10?
I don't know. I started counting at like 5, so I just assumed it was 5.
We'll call it 10.
Yeah, we'll call it 10. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. We just answered your question, London. We'll definitely have Kyle back at some point. I still want to have Kyle and Big John Mize together, because I don't think that I won't even say anything. It'll just be those two arguing and laughing at each other. It'd be great. And then Blake being Blake. So yeah. Let's go with Gabe on this one from Western Redbird. We kind of already talked about this, but I didn't know if you had anything else to say. Why are projections high on Wynn this year?
I mean, defense basically. They're not that high on the offense. I mean, it's like an 88, right?
Yeah.
OPS. That seems fair enough. I mean, that's the best answer I can give. It's just that they're pretty high on his defense, because I think he posted a biggest improvers midseason, or when I say he, I mean Dan Szymborski. Midseason, he said the biggest improvers, and Mason was one of the top 5. And the reason why was because they had him as like a +10 in AAA, which I take that with a grain of salt, because I don't think their defensive whatever is accurate at all. But he clearly has the tools to be that good. So defense is the reason why his projection is so good.
Yeah. Adam, you've been one of the, I wouldn't say detractors. You've been the lowest on Wynn among us, mostly around his bat. So let me just ask you that this way. What are your thoughts on Mason Wynn hitting an 88 WRC plus? Like, is that within your realm of possibility, or is that even high for you?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think at some point his 50th percentile outcome throughout the first 6 years of team control is 100. So for him to be at 88 somewhere along that line in his first full year season is not out of the realm of possibility at all. Yeah. One thing I want to say about Wynn is that I didn't know that he's improved his hard hit percentage year after year by a ton. I think it was about the same single in AAA. But the fact that it may have like fluctuating a little bit higher in the season in single A, in high A and double A in years where we don't have minor league data available to us publicly, I guess could give you some reason to believe that, hey, could potentially hit for a little bit more power. So if that's the case, I could see him maybe reaching a little bit of a higher WRC projection. But even then, I'm still not sold on Mason when even going into the season. We saw what happened for the small sample size.
Yeah. So I didn't get all the names of the question askers here, and so I missed this one. I'll try to look it up while Blake is answering the question. Blake, I love this question. What's the truth of Cooper Jerpy? Talk Jerper to me, baby. So, what's the truth of Cooper Jerpy? It's a really hard question to answer, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the truth on Cooper Jerpy is that we really just have to wait and see. I mean, he's got a super high ceiling, but there's just a lot of potential outcomes in there. He's just a high variance prospect, honestly, at this point. And I think a lot of that's because his control and command backed up a little bit from where it was at in college. I think that's due like kind of to maybe he had like some elbow issues during the year. I think it was like a loose body in his elbow, whatever that means. I can see how that would affect command. So if he comes back and his command's better, I think he's going to do good. He's going to show himself a lot better than he did this year. He had issues against lefties, which can happen with guys with that arm slot. So I can see why some people would think he's just going to be like a loogie, basically. But I think he's got the changeup that he needs to counteract righties. He just has to be able to command his stuff well as a whole when he's pitching to lefties, and he just didn't have that command last year. He couldn't get inside on hitters, and he really needs to get inside on righties with that back foot slider if he's going to actually have success with it. So, I mean, the guy can miss bats. He's got outlier release traits. The fastball plays really well at a low velocity. The slider and changeup are nasty. The other bridges everything together. Like all the stuff you want to see from metrics perspective is there. It's just going to be if he can command his pitches well enough and if he can get outs against lefties. So he's probably one of three guys in the system who has top of the rotation ceiling. There's just a lot of potential outcomes that are short of that too.
Yeah. By the way, that was SW3775, if I can read my TV from across the screen, that asked that question. So thank you, SW. And thank you, Blade, for getting Jerpy on us. So I think that's good for the prospects. A couple other questions. Sorry, guys, we didn't get them all. But some of them, honestly, we've answered in other questions, or we have whole podcasts on. And so go back and check through our history on YouTube, and you can see some of those things already being answered there. All right, let's talk a little bit of contract stuff. I'll take this one from the Duke. Hey, Duke, if the starting budget ends up where we expect it to, plus or minus some relievers, what does that mean? How do you interpret what's going on? Well, Duke, I haven't written about payroll for a while, but I think if I was going to write about it, what I would say is that it seems to me that the Cardinals set a budget total and didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it, because their primary concern was sort of taking care of their business before they lost out on the ability to do so. And what I mean by that is that early in the offseason, they're like, okay, who wants to be here? I mean, literally what they said, who wants to be here? Well, today we can sign Lance Lynn. And today we could go ahead and get Kyle Gibson. Kyle Gibson's not a bad pitcher. We could go ahead and get him, right? Or we could try to get Edwin Jackson. Not Edwin Jackson. That's a little Eduardo Rodriguez. I don't know why. I've always thought of them. They're basically the same pitcher. They really were. Eduardo Rodriguez. There's my comp, by the way, for Eduardo Rodriguez. I just gave it to you. I haven't ever written it, but it's true. We could try to get Eduardo. We could try to get, some of these other guys, or we could just go ahead and take, Lynn and Gibson right now. And then, take our shot at Gray, who we think we got a really good chance at. They did. So they got that done. And then they're like, oh, well, we got all this budget space left. Let's try to save as much as we can, because it's still November. And then we'll see what comes along the rest of the year. So they backloaded Gray's deal and gave themselves a bunch of flexibility. And then they were like, well, what else do we need to do? I mean, this is a very Cardinals answer. We don't have to do anything else except for maybe we'll see what happens to Jordan Hicks. And if not, we can always just sign Phil Matten, and, we'll probably be good enough. There's always the trade deadline. We'll have plenty of money to save. So I think it was really about Mozeliak wanting to ensure that he didn't get caught with his pants down, and they jumped in the deals. They made them. And now we've got, I wouldn't say an optics problem with the budget, but that's the second year in a row in that. You do wish they would have spent more, but also, I guess the way that the market's gone, I would be really nervous if we were sitting here with Gray signed and nothing else done. you know, because that's the way the pitching market has kind of gone. Imanaga's still out there. All these other guys are still out there. I'd be really nervous today if we had one starter with the way things are going. So can't hardly blame him, but that's the story. So that's that question. To the second one here, I think it's another good question. I'll just let some of you take this one. I'll start with Gabe. Tommy Edman under team control for 24 and 25. Do you see Edman getting a contract extension?
Probably not. He kind of, I mean, not a good comparison, but they didn't give, I mean, Colton Long, they didn't accept his team option. I think they might just let him go to free agency when the time comes, especially if Peter Scott becomes maybe what the VB readers clearly think he'll be, being the number 3 prospect in the system, apparently. Yeah, and then we got Gorman at second or Donovan at second, and we got Winn at short. So, I mean, unfortunately, I think he's probably just going to get squeezed out eventually, and maybe we trade him before he reaches free agency to get a pitcher or something. But yeah, I don't think there's like any chance of a contract extension personally.
Yeah. I think it's telling that they've moved him off position or out of or into a different position twice. They love him. They absolutely love him. But as soon as sort of anyone came along that they were more excited about, Edman was the one that was moved. And I think that as long as the roster keeps going in the same direction, more prospects coming up, prospects making it, then Edman's going to eventually get shifted out. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about, there's some questions about players, managers, positions, things like that. Heather, I got this one for you, which I know you'd love it. Who is the next manager after Ollie Marmol? Who do you got?
Do you think it's Yachty or Molina?
I'm asking you the question.
So here's the thing. I don't really know, because they also have, they have Pop Warner as an option as well. He was the manager for the Springfield Cardinals, and he's the third base coach now, I believe. That would be an option. It seems like they would have went to him already, though, if he were someone that they wanted in that role, and to me, Ollie Marmol kind of came out of nowhere to be the manager. I think was he the bench coach? So they also do seem to do that where they have the bench coach. It's almost like they're moving through to manager, sort of manager training, then manager. Who is the current bench coach?
Descalso, I think, right?
Is it
Descalso?
Descalso? That's it. Okay. So that would be interesting.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah. So yeah, if really history is any indication, it could be Daniel Descalso, and we all know he didn't serve in World War II to not be a leader of men. That is an ancient VEB reference.
That is. Yes, it is.
I don't know if you remember that one, but that one. That is the curious case of. I think I linked it secretly somewhere once.
Yeah.
But that is the curious case of Daniel Descalso.
Yeah,
if anyone wants to look that.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's on VEB. I think it's on the defunct St. Louis St. Louis Sports SB Nation site. Anyway, but that would be interesting. So I said a lot of things, but it does seem like maybe Descalso would be the next person.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I'm going to say something crazy here, and I'm going to say the next person is someone we've never even heard of right now.
Yeah.
I think that the Cardinals are going to re-enter their 80 to 90 win total and stay there for multiple years, and so Ollie's just going to keep the job for a while, which would be fine with me. I have no real problem with Ollie. I'm not super impressed with him, but I like it when they win, and if they win with Ollie, I'm happy. So,
yeah. You guys think that if Ollie's fired midseason, is then Descalso the coach? Because I was listening to the radio, and they all assumed Yachty was going to be the successor, and I don't think that's true at all, personally.
It doesn't seem like they're setting him up for that. He seems more like a Okendo sort of coaching role.
It would. I'll tell you who it would be. It would be Joe McEwing. What they did was they promoted McEwing
I forgot about Lil
out of the bench coach role into where he's like a supervisory position over coaches. They would just drop him down into the manager. Unless they wanted Descalso to potentially compete for the job, but McEwing would just be a temporary placeholder for them to hire. And I think that's why they would go that route. Personally, that's just my opinion. So
yeah. I agree. I think you're right on there. I completely forgot about that move. Did that also happen this offseason?
Yeah, they did.
Man, that felt like it was years ago.
They've made quite a few pitching changes. In fact, Derek
Yeah.
Gould was kind of talking about that a little bit, which I mean, the Cardinals want to put everything in their payroll, I guess, but he was talking about how part of the issue with payroll is that they've, coaching and coaching expenses is part of quote payroll, not 40-man or 26-man payroll, but it's part of their expenses, and they've added payroll there, so it's something to
those
factor in.
coaches that are making 20 million a season.
Paying for Billy Joel to come in, apparently, according to Twitter. So, anyway, you guys had any other thoughts on manager? Or are we good there?
Good.
We're good. Okay. We talked about an Arenado. We talked about center field many times. Let's talk writing. We'll finish this out with 2 writing questions. I love this question, Heather. So here you go.
Okay.
Our fascist dictator, Simon,
Right.
telling us what to write all the time, and me, the site editor who changes all of your posts, never edited one of your posts. I think the only posts I've ever edited are, well, I won't even say Heather from Salty Cracker. As writers, are you encouraged to write positive things about the Cardinals? Heather, go.
Okay, so I thought about this actually quite a bit. And here's how I kind of look at this, at least writing for VEB, right? It's a fan sort of site, ran by fans, written by fans, for fans. And I am a fan of the Cardinals, and I always use that lens with everything I write about them. And so I don't want to write negative things. It's not really my personality, personally for me. But I think there is a place for that. And I think that's a good, healthy amount of, being realistic and being positive. There's a quote from Avatar: The Last Airbender where one of the characters, it's Katara, says something about says something optimistic, and then her brother says something about, do you think I'm lying? He's like, no, you're an optimist. It's like basically the same thing. I butchered the quote. I should have looked it up. I just butchered it. And I normally can quote that off the top of my head like it's nothing. I've seen that show so many times. But anyway, it's like being a realistic versus being optimistic, and not necessarily, those aren't necessarily the same thing. So anyway, the point of that is that I try to find even in like bad seasons, there's usually positive things happening, or even if you're writing about something negative, you don't have to like be negative about it. It can just be, sometimes things just are. So I always try to find things that people would want to read, and people don't always want to read like, oh, Cardinals are the worst. Like if they're the worst, you can see with your eyes. So let's find something interesting within that lens. That's a long-winded answer, but
I'm not the longest tenured writer here. Gabe, I think, probably would be. So Gabe, you can answer this question too, but so far in my tenure here since 2019, no one has told me what to write at all. So yeah, I just write whatever I want to. Basically, sometimes, I just write whatever I want. Gabe, has anyone ever told you what to write?
No, one time I wrote something that got deleted.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
I remember that. The
I
famous
wrote it on my phone in Mexico when I was
the famous corn cob recap.
Yeah. It was a game recap, and then it got deleted, and it was one of my best work.
Gotta get this archived in the group chat. We can all read it.
Once you put it on the internet, forever. It's got to be out there.
I mean,
someone has it for sure.
All these things out there, and CDB will find them. So
it was a whole thing because I had spent a lot of time like writing up the recap, and then all of a sudden I go to post it, and there's, hey there, corn cob. And I'm like, Greg, Gabe wrote the recap.
I had been drinking for like 6 hours at that point. Wrote it in a cap. So,
oh man,
yeah.
There's also a dare, I think, involved, which I respect. I respect writing a recap on a dare.
Thunder dared me to. Yeah. Thunder, old guy.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned actually very early, my first article, was a critical piece about Harrison Bader that Bader didn't read. He read the title of and then commented on on the internet, which was a real
Mhm.
wake up call for me right away. It's like, oh, these, and I've learned this since then that like, yeah, these players sometimes see this and their moms see it and their dads see it
Mhm.
and their brothers and their sisters see it. And not that I've had a lot of interaction with players and players' families, but I've had some. And so like I know that some of you think that I've been like critical of the front office. Well, the front office is a thing, right? It's I mean, there are people there, but
Right, but it's a
you know,
unit.
yeah, but I try to save most of my critique for the organization, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of my player reviews, I'll have some negatives, I'll have some critiques, I'll have they need to work on this, but I try to be more optimistic on the player side because I know, I look for the skills. There's a reason why these players are in the majors, and so finding those things and writing about those things is a good thing. That doesn't mean they're not also aware of their faults, but I personally am not overly critical of players because of that reason and save
Yeah.
it for the institution, the organization. So I don't know if you guys have experienced that or not, but
I That's always in the forefront of
I
my
think
mind because
personality goes into it too. Like in the past, we've had more, I don't want to say negative or whatever, just more dynamic, negative, critiquey kind of writers. And right now we got, at least, Blake and Gabe and Heather are lean optimist, some. And I depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in a bad mood, I'll write bad stuff. If I'm in a good mood, I'll write good stuff. So, and Adam, you can be pretty critical, but
hmm
I don't
I
know if
think it's
you're not writing a whole lot now because because of school, but I mean, in the past, you've been pretty, what's the word? Straightforward in your critiques.
hmm
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like one thing I've noticed just kind of writing in like a couple of sites now, it's just that, it doesn't help anyone to sugarcoat anything, at least what I've noticed just with media in general, not just with sports. I'm someone that's very just, give exactly what happened and give exactly what is the best critique, what do you believe if someone is a, expert in that field. But that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't be looking at it with a sense of optimism, right? Because you could just as easily look at the glass half full or the glass half empty and try to like make a judgment or try to take a direction based on the critique. And if it's just all negative without offering some sort of like positive go round, then you're not helping anyone, right? So you always want to have some sort of like light that's at the end of the tunnel that you can address to. And that's what I usually try to do at the end of the day. Because I mean, these guys are all the very best in the world at what they do, right? So there's always some sort of at the end of the day, each one of these guys will flash the potential, even if it's for like 10 plate appearances of a major league of an MVP caliber player. Every single player in the Major League Baseball is capable of doing that over the course of like 10 plate appearances, right? That's why they're Major League Baseball players. And you kind of have to think about that too and how much work they put in and who they are. So it's kind of again, cool, like a kind of interesting balance to kind of find. But I always tend to like steer on the side of where you want to be as honest as possible with what you're seeing, as objective as you can.
Yeah. One
I
thing
would
that
think.
go ahead, Heather. Yeah, please.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just to say we had the like the golden rule at VEB back when we wrote our own site rules, and one was like whatever you're saying something you would say in a room full of these people. And so I was kind
Yeah.
of thinking that with my writing too, is like if I'm writing something, if the play like kind of what you mentioned with Harrison Bader, if the player read this, would I not want them to read this? So I think it's like important to always when you're writing about someone is like you look at the stats and the facts, but you don't try to like you always, not the person but the performance.
Yeah.
Like this person isn't trying hard enough. Well, you don't know that. You can't possibly know that. I always just assume everyone's trying their best.
Yeah.
I think there is an old like comment on one of the old podcasts that I was on one time, and someone was like mad at me because I said that Mark Reynolds seems like a nice guy. And they're like, "What kind of commentary is this? Seems like a nice guy." And I'm like, "What am I supposed to say
Yeah.
about Mark Reynolds?" But anyway.
Last thing I'll say on this to kind of close things out here is that we don't have a press pass. We
hmm
don't rely on access to the organization. So the organization can't hold anything over us. So, and some other sites, they've got to mince their words or whatever, or say things a certain way or report things a certain way because because they've got access and they want to keep that access, and they got players they got to be accountable to in the locker room. We don't have that. So, not that we can say whatever we want. That's not the point. But we don't hear from, at least, I mean, I don't, Heather, I don't know whether you were, we don't hear from the Cardinals PR office whenever we write a critical post. We know they read the site, but we don't ever hear from them. So being objective is worthwhile, though. In it's not journalism what we do, but it's close. And so trying to be as objective, as accurate as we can be, while being humorous and entertaining at the same time. So.
Did you hear that, Cardinals? That means you should hire or give us PR passes so that start talking nicely.
We'll
I
be
just want
nicer.
the free lunch. Did you hear they got a free lunch today? Here, all they were doing was announcing a concert, right? And and Jeff Jones got and Brendan Schaefer got a free lunch out of it. I'm
Hey, I'll be way more positive about the Cardinals if they start giving me free food.
Yeah, that's the key. That's
all
the
right,
key
whatever
to my
you want.
heart.
Yeah, Mo, I will carry your water all day if I can get a free plate of nachos.
If we ever actually want access, we probably cut this part out.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
We are totally for sale, Cardinals. VEB is for sale. All right. Well, that's VVB this week. We don't have anything on the docket next. We'll see. I'm hoping to bring in some guests. We got some fun stuff coming up for the winter here before, spring training rolls around, which is not that far away. Only a little over a month. And so we'll let you know what the next podcast is going to be. But yeah, I'm going to have some guests maybe and some outside speakers, and we'll see what develops. But we'll try to have fun for the next few weeks before we hit the actual baseball content. So for site manager Heather, for always the optimist Blake, for whatever the mood strikes him, whether he's in Mexico or not, Gabe, and for Wash U's own Adam Akbani, I'm JP Hill, and it's good to see you guys. Have a wonderful Saturday, and we'll check you on the site. So have a wonderful day, VE Bells. VEL Birdos. VEL Birdos.
I like VE
What did I
Bells.
say, Larry Borowski?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see you guys. Have a great weekend.